Okay.
You know you're in.
Okay, so Lauren and I, Amber was gonna come, but she got sick, so we're gonna pick up where she couldn't fill in. But we're talking about the CCC project on the national level, and it was actually the CCC project was actually called was originally the emergency conservation work, but then it kind of got changed to CCC, which stands for Civil Conservation Camps. And I will be explaining kind of in the beginning when it got started and how the state of the country, and then like what departments like Secretary of War, Labor, and Agriculture were involved and what they did, their role in that, and then why President Roosevelt started it. The CCC project was established in 1933 within 100 days of Roosevelt's administration. And basically, his election, it was during the Depression, or like kind of soon after, during the Depression. And so they were, like, the people were desperate, and so his election was kind of different. Like, the president before him was voted out of presidency. And so, like, the people just wanted someone who would get them out of there and kind of keep things moving forward instead of backwards. And so he came up with this idea, and the guy who kind of got everyone excited about it was named Harold Ike. And yeah, he just kind of basically was the head of getting it all started. But then, like, he consulted, like I said before, he consulted the Secretary of War, Agriculture, and Labor. And the Secretary of War played a huge part in getting it started and also keeping it going and moving productively. They basically, because all the rural areas were in the west and where a lot of the men lived were in the east, they had to figure out how to get all the men over to the west. And so like the military, like the army, and like I said, all the people, like the Secretary of War, kind of figured out how to get all those people over to the camps that they were going to be working at. And then, after they got there, they were in charge of organizing, conducting, transporting, entertaining, educating, and like medical care, discipline, and like religious administration. And originally, they weren't going to have education, and there was actually a big controversy on that, educating the men after they got there, because they were trying to decide if they wanted to do that, because they didn't want it to get in the way, or like take up time that the men would actually be working. And so, because of the purpose was to improve like the environment, and so they wanted to make sure that they had that what they wanted to get done was being done. And but they decided to have education, and they ended up educating over, like teaching over 40,000 men, illiterate men, to read, and so it actually ended up being very beneficial. They were paid to work there, and one of the second secretary, I don't know how to say it, the second program or second department, I don't know, like secretary, he consulted the Secretary of Agriculture, and their role was after was like organizing the actual work that they'd be doing, so like coming here and figuring out what they needed done here in Osage or Willow Rock, and so that was kind of their role. And then the Secretary of Labor received all the applications and decided who was eligible to be in the program. And so Roosevelt's purpose in starting this was to get young men who lost their jobs during the Depression back on their feet, because he feared that if these men couldn't bounce back, then that would continue to affect the economy and just make it worse. And so he came up with this plan to give these guys, kind of get them back on their feet, while also improving the rural areas of the United States. Like, for example, we watched the Dust Bowl, and just kind of take care of problems like that, and like using the resources and helping these guys. And so the men, they did a lot of different kind of work. One article I read said they did like 100 different kinds of work, such as like planting trees, rebuilding bridges, clearing up beaches, filling fish and lakes with fish, doing things like here in Willow Rock, and so it ended up being very beneficial to both the men and the agricultural, or like the United States in the land.
And I'm kind of going to go over the guidelines for those men. Like, indications that work was vital to the newborn CCC was President Roosevelt's decision to assign responsibility for recruiting enrollees to the Department of Labor. According to the department's guidelines, enrollment in the Corps was restricted to the unemployed. Enrollees had to be jobless and willing to send between $22 and $25 of their monthly paycheck back home to their families, and they were required to be receiving public assistance. Those wishing to join the CCC also had to be single and 18 to 25 years of age. More importantly, enrollment throughout the New Deal programs, 9-year existence was restricted to men, despite from the American women for admittance to the Corps in Eleanor Roosevelt's attempts to establish CCC camps for women. Women's bodies were proven to not be up to par, and so compared to men's physical abilities, women would not be able to join the job and do it properly. And then this would be Amber. In 1940, as people began to get drafted into the military, there became fewer and fewer eligible young men for the program. Also, the United States started to come out of the Depression, and more employment opportunities arose. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the government shifted all of its programs to help with the war effort. All of the camps either closed or focused their efforts on construction for military bases. The CCC was officially disbanded on June 30th, 1943, because of the Labor Federal Security Appropriation Act. Some of the camps reopened at a later date to hold German prisoners of war. The CCC was considered one of the most popular and successful New Deal programs over the course of 9 years. This program helped over 3 million young men with jobs, clothes, and shelter. By the time the CCC ended, workers had planted 3 billion trees, constructed more than 800 parks, and updated most national parks, and fought forest fires and brought roads to rural areas. The effects of the CCC were seen for years. After the Depression and the war, it was stated that the businessmen looking to hire would prefer someone who had been a part of the CCC. This program did not only help the struggling people of America, it more importantly helped the United States as a whole. So, yes.